Sam was always a man of digits, not flesh. His world was a blur of pixels, algorithms, and endless data. He was a data recovery expert, a digital archaeologist, capable of extracting information from any device, no matter how broken. His clients came from all walks of life, from businessmen who'd lost crucial documents to desperate parents searching for the last photos of their deceased children. Sam had seen it all: compromising evidence, hidden secrets, final messages. But nothing could prepare him for what he found on the old, battered phone brought to him by a strange, pale client. The client was a tall, stooped man named Marcus. His eyes darted around and his hands trembled as he placed the old smartphone on the table. It just died a few weeks ago, just stopped working. I need the photos, any of them, especially those taken in the last few days. Sam felt a chill. There was something in Marcus's voice that made him raise an eyebrow. This will cost more than usual. Old models often resist. Marcus merely nodded, his gaze fixed on the phone as if it were a living predator. I don't care, just get them. Sam took the phone, and as soon as Marcus left, something in the office atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, and the familiar hum of the servers sounded ominous. Sam dove into his work. Hours passed. He connected the phone to various programs, ran it through powerful algorithms, and finally the old device sprang to life. The internal storage was damaged, but Sam was a master of his craft. He began extracting files, one by one. The first few folders were ordinary: selfies, food photos, screenshots, nothing unusual. But then Sam stumbled upon a folder dated just a few days before Marcus brought the phone in. And those photos, they showed a woman, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, her face expressing genuine terror. The pictures were taken in the same dark room, and each subsequent shot showed her condition worsening. She looked more and more emaciated, frightened, almost spectral. In the last few photos, her eyes were wide open, as if she'd seen something unimaginable. Sam felt shivers run down his spine. This was too personal, too intimate. He was sure these photos weren't meant for outside eyes. Then he discovered a video, a few short clips filmed in the same room. In the first, the woman was crying softly. In the second, she was mumbling something, her gaze fixed on a corner of the room where nothing was visible. And then, in the third video, a voice could be heard, a whisper, indistinct, yet chilling to the bone. Sam listened intently, trying to make out the words, but all he heard was that eerie, almost animalistic murmur. At that moment, the phone vibrated in his hand. The screen briefly went dark, and then a distorted, dark blotch appeared, slowly expanding like an ink stain. Sam threw the phone away. "What the hell?" he muttered. The phone lay on the floor, its screen flickering. Sam, without knowing why, picked it up. The blotch was gone. He looked at the video again. The whisper grew louder, and he thought he heard his own name. "Sam, you saw her?" Terror gripped him. It wasn't the woman's voice from the video. It was another voice, deep, hoarse, full of malice. Sam turned off the phone, disconnected it from all ports, and locked it in his safe. He tried to rationalize it. A system glitch, a file corruption. But the trembling in his hands wouldn't stop. He couldn't sleep that night. Thoughts of the woman in the photos, the whisper, the dark blotch haunted him. He felt like he heard a distant whisper calling his name. He even thought he saw shadows flickering in the corners of the room. The next morning, Sam woke feeling like he hadn't slept at all. He couldn't ignore that phone. He had to understand what was happening. He took the phone out of the safe. It was cold as ice. Sam turned it on again and tried to find the source of the problem. He began looking through the system files. And then he saw it, a folder titled Sins. Inside the folder were photos. At first Sam thought they were more pictures of the woman. But no, these were photos of Marcus, his face, and what he saw was horrifying. In these pictures, Marcus was beating the woman, the same woman from the previous photos. Her face was contorted in pain, and her eyes held a silent plea for help. Sam felt nauseous. He realized that Marcus hadn't just brought him a broken phone, he had brought him evidence of his crime. And not just evidence, this was the victim's phone. Then Sam noticed one photo taken in the same room but from a different angle. In it, Marcus was holding a knife, and behind him stood a figure, semi-transparent, distorted with long limbs and empty eye sockets. The entity. It was staring at Marcus like a predator at its prey. Sam went cold. This thing wasn't just scary, it was close. It was watching. At that moment the phone rang, but it wasn't a normal ringtone. It was a long, low hum that vibrated the windows. Sam didn't know what to do. He couldn't just give this evidence to Marcus. He called the police, his voice trembling. He explained everything he'd seen, feeling crazy. The police arrived. Sam showed them the phone, the photos, the video. The officers were skeptical, but the evidence was too obvious. The woman's disfigured face, Marcus's brutality. As the police reviewed the files, the phone rang again, and this time the call was clearer. It was his own phone. Marcus flashed on the screen. Marcus, it turned out, was already at the station. He confessed to killing his wife, Jennifer. He was convinced she was cheating on him, and in a fit of rage, he beat her to death. And the phone? He was sure Jennifer had deleted all the evidence. During the interrogation, he described how, after killing Jennifer, he tried to get rid of the phone. He threw it in the river, buried it in the woods, smashed it with a hammer. But each time the phone returned. He found it on his pillow, in his mailbox, even in the refrigerator. Marcus was convinced the phone was cursed, and that Jennifer's spirit was haunting him through it. He brought it to Sam, hoping he could cleanse it of the curse by erasing all the data. Marcus was sentenced to life in prison. The phone, which was key evidence, was confiscated. It was kept in a sealed bag, and no one dared to touch it. But Sam didn't care anymore. He was broken. He saw what happened to Marcus. He saw how it affected his own perception of reality. He realized that sometimes the information he sought should remain hidden. He closed his business, sold all his equipment. He no longer wanted to seek the truth. He had seen enough. Now, when Sam hears a phone ring, his heart tightens. He feels like he hears that hoarse whisper again, calling his name. He knows that there are things that shouldn't exist, and that sometimes the most mundane objects can be gateways to the most terrifying nightmares. He no longer picks up a phone that doesn't belong to him. Never again. The whisper of old tape recordings. Leia wasn't like other audio engineering students. While most aimed for perfect crystal clear sound, Leia sought out the flaws. Her passion was old analog recordings, especially those found in abandoned houses, attics, or at estate sales. She believed that within the static crackle and distortion of these tapes lay something more than just lost information. Something digital technology mercilessly filtered out. One day at a flea market, Leia stumbled upon a yellowed cardboard box. Inside were old audio cassettes, labelled with illegible handwriting, M.S. Journal. Leia felt a chill run down her spine. The labels were scratched and the tapes were pulled out of their casings in places, but curiosity took over. She bought them all, Back in her studio, which looked more like a paranormal research lab, Leia hooked up an old cassette player. The first tape hissed, then a voice emerged. A man's voice, deep, slightly trembling. He spoke of his daily routines, the weather, his wife Sarah. It sounded like an ordinary, boring journal. Leia listened to tape after tape. Gradually, she noticed something strange. Starting with the third cassette, a faint, barely audible whisper began to emerge beneath the man's voice. At first, it was so quiet that Leia attributed it to interference or tape degradation. But the further she went, the clearer the whisper became. Sometimes it sounded feminine, sometimes childlike. It was unintelligible, like words spoken just beyond the range of hearing. Leia felt the tension building. She used all her skills to isolate the whisper, cleaning it from the background noise. Hours turned into days. She drank liters of coffee, forgetting about food and sleep. She became obsessed. One day, working on the oldest tape, Leia heard a distinct word. Leave. It was spoken in a low, husky voice, right on the edge of audibility, but it couldn't be mistaken for interference. Then came a sound like claws scraping wood, which quickly faded. The man in the journal mumbled something about the old house and creaking floors. Leia flinched. This wasn't just interference. The closer she got to the last recordings, the more unstable the man's voice became. He started coughing, his breathing grew ragged, and then he began muttering about the cold, a shadow in the corner, and eyes watching from the darkness. The background whisper became louder, multi-voiced, turning into a chorus. Leia distinguished moans, sobs, and even short, piercing screams. The climax came on the last tape. The recording began with the man's rapid breathing. He cried, begging someone or something to leave him alone. He called out a name, Sarah. Then there was a crash, as if something heavy had fallen. And after that, silence. Dead. Absolute silence. No man's voice. Only the whisper. But now the whisper wasn't just unintelligible, it was distinct. Thousands of voices merged into one, repeating the same word over and over. Find. Leia froze. She understood. The whisper didn't just belong to the man, it belonged to everyone who had been in that house. She felt compelled to find that house. She couldn't sleep until she knew the truth. The man in the journal had only mentioned a street and a town. The old house on Elm Street, 14 Oakwood. Leia quickly packed and drove to Oakwood. The town was small, but Elm Street, 14, was known to locals as the Clark House. Decades ago, a tragedy had occurred there. The Clark family, husband, wife, and 2 children, disappeared without a trace. Police found no clues. The house was sealed and no one had entered it since. Leia approached the house. It was abandoned, windows broken, paint peeling. The air around it felt heavy, cold, even on a summer day. She felt a presence. Using her tools, Leia broke the lock and went inside. The house was full of old, dust-covered furniture. The air smelled of decay and something else, something unnatural. She turned on her voice recorder to capture any sounds. She went into the living room, then the bedroom. The same gloomy atmosphere prevailed everywhere. Nothing. Leia began to doubt her theory. Maybe it was just her wild imagination. And then she saw it. On the wooden floor in the bedroom, almost invisible under a layer of dust, were fresh claw marks. Deep grooves, as if something very large and sharp had recently moved there. Just like she'd heard on the tape. At that moment, Leia heard it. The whisper. It was right behind her. Thousands of voices merging into one right in her ear. Find! Leia spun around. In the corner of the room, in the shadows, she saw a figure. Tall, hunched with black, hollow eyes. It was made of shadows and despair, the same entity the man on the tape had described. And it wasn't alone. Behind it, barely discernible, stood other shadows, small, childlike. Leia understood. The man hadn't just disappeared. He had been killed by this entity. It fed on fear, and his wife and children, they were its first victims. The whisper on the tape was their last screams, their desperate plea for help, trapped in time. The entity didn't want them to be found. It wanted their pain to continue. And now it wanted Leia. She bolted. The whisper pursued her, growing louder, more demanding. It was in her head. She ran out of the house, not looking back. Leia never returned to Oakwood. She destroyed all the cassettes, all the recordings she had extracted from them. She abandoned her career as an audio engineer. Now she didn't search for hidden sounds. Now she was afraid to hear them, because she knew the whisper was still there. It was waiting for someone else to start searching. And when it found them, it would only say one word: "Find